you, I know, have had some pretty amazing prophetic dreams, including one recently back in March, I think early March, warning the approaching six storms. And I would like to give you the chance to explain to our listeners that prophetic dream because I think it's very significant.
Okay, Tony. Yeah, I've had two dreams that I can recall in the last few months that I've woken up and literally sat straight up in bed and reverently said, God, please no, no, God. And just, after I had the day after I had this dream, all day long I was extremely fatigued spiritually, mentally, emotionally. It wore me out. The Lord made this very real to me. So I'm going to read it as I recorded it the following morning. And I had this dream on March the 11th of this year, 2018. And I'll read it as I wrote it the next morning. The dream I had last night will be difficult to share. One, because it was so traumatic to have seen and have been involved in, and two, the symbolism and the meanings are hard to capture. So as always, I will share what I saw, and I will leave the timing and interpretation up to God. Dream of overwhelming devastation times two. It was almost as though in both the natural and in the spirit we were being warned. The people knew they had been warned. I knew I had been warned. I had been warned by God, and I had warned many others as instructed by God. It was almost like we were being foretold of that which was coming as we looked at the map. There was not a single state that was not affected by these approaching storms. From the West Coast to the East Coast to the Midlands, everyone would see devastation. Even now I can see the map, and I can see the swirling colors gathering. What's odd is that normally, as meteorologists would show on the radar that which was coming and use different colors symbolizing the severity, they literally ran out of colors to be able to accurately describe that which would hit. I can hear even now as they foretold and were trying to tell the people, oh, please, and I quote, oh, please, my God, prepare and know that even your preparation may not save you. Now, admittedly, here's the part that I don't understand, but I will report what I saw and heard. They said there were 6 storms coming. These storms had each been given names. This time they were given names of animals and birds as to how each would affect the land and the people. We were told that the first storm would be as a bird and it would peck away at everything and shake things mightily, but would also be used to deliver the message as in days of old. I cannot recall the second storm's name. They told us that we would experience the end of all things when the wolf came, and it was the third storm. They showed us on the map. Through tears and stuttering and hanging their heads, they told us to prepare. One of the last things they said before they went off air was, we really have nothing to compare this to. We must get ready because you have never seen anything like this before. That night it hit. Storm number 1. It hit with a magnitude that no one expected. I remember that I could not gather myself enough to discern if this was natural or man-made because it literally seemed to be both simultaneously. The winds, the rain, the wreckage, everything. I recall watching the large trees bending under the weight of the wind and seeing the waters rising on the coast and seeing the heartland pounded by a mighty force. The next morning, just as it was named, it had pecked and shaken everything. The word had indeed traveled across country at the devastation that had occurred. Now it was time to move on to the next storm warning, and this is where it gets tough. Again, we looked at the map, and literally we all gasped as we saw the size and scope of that which was coming, and knowing the magnitude of the first. This time, all they would say was, we really don't know what to say, we really don't know how to warn, just prepare as best you can. The next day, it hit. During the daylight hours, it came. It was really odd, for you could see the storm clouds gathering, and you could literally hear it coming. I remember seeing the looks of fear and dread on people's faces. Some people prayed, others checked their supplies. For one of the first times ever, though, it seemed as though everyone was taking the warnings to heart, and there was little to no mockery. The first storm had taken care of all of that. The power by which these storms hit is truly unexplainable. Every foundation was shaken. Every room of the house had been moved. I saw naval destroyers literally capsized on dry ground far from the coast from where they had come. I saw death and destruction in unprecedented ways. There was not a single family, business, or church that had not been affected in some way or devastated. I recall back now that while it was happening, that I literally expected to be swept away any moment, and I expected to be standing before my Lord at any second. The cries of pain and heartache was nothing I want to hear again. Again, the wind, the rain, the shaking, the sounds of explosions, the waters rising, the ground splitting, and seeing the ocean waters flowing through rivers. I recall after storm number 2 had hit thinking, now I know why Jesus said that those days must be cut short, for if they were not, no flesh would be saved. I remember thinking, my God, this is only storm 2 of 6. All of humanity and all of the earth will be wiped out, and the earth will disintegrate beneath our feet. Even those most prepared among us, many of them perished, for there appeared in many cases, in fact most cases, to be no escape. There were godly among us who had been taken, along with many of those who were not believers. I noticed, though, that even as I surveyed the landscape the following day, I could not believe the devastation and damage. Everything had indeed been shaken, just as foretold by Christ. The one thing I saw that surprised me now was it seemed to be very few, if any, who did not believe. Everyone was broken in an unforeseen way, a level of brokenness that I had never witnessed before ever. Amidst the tragedy and devastation and carnage, there arose a brokenness among the people, for they knew it was only a matter of time. It was then that we gathered to hear the next forecast. We were all so tired and so weary, but there was a deep work going on in the heart of man. It was evident that God was at work. This would be the wolf coming this time. As the forecaster took the stage, he was visibly shaken, but not in despondency. This time something was different. He stood before the camera. He gathered himself as best he could, and I heard him say these words, "The people are repenting. The people are repenting." He then said, and it's because of this repentance that, well, look at these storms now. Yes, they are still coming, but they have been dramatically weakened and will not cause the devastation we had originally anticipated. This reporter wept on national television. I recall myself and all those around me weeping and praising God. And me being me, my mind immediately went to, okay, now it's time to gather the harvest. The fields are white in the harvest. Let us go forth now and bring them in. At this, I awoke.
Yeah, that's powerful. And people, if you want to actually read that that dream, Cara Pickering has published it on prophetictimelines.wordpress.com. And so I was actually able to follow along while Marty was reading that on Cara's website. So that's one place. I know you've put it on Facebook and things too, but if people want a quick way to be able to go and read that prophecy, I think that's a good place to do it. The 6 approaching storms, a sobering dream given to Marty Breeden. And that again is at prophetictimelines.wordpress.com. So Marty, what are your thoughts now, about a month onward from having had that dream?
I think it's inevitable that something's coming, and I do think it's going to be devastating. I think much of the dream is literal. Some of it obviously is symbolic, but I do think that we are going to go through some really, really hard times. But this confirms what I've sensed in my heart, Tony, and what I believe the word says, that in the midst of tragedy, in the midst of chaos, in the midst of crisis, that God is going to pour out his spirit, and we are going to experience a great latter-day outpouring. That's the real thing. I think it very possible it could surpass the book of Acts. I think that, with all of the technology today, with all of everything that's going on, I think people are longing in a sense to see something beyond the natural, and there's an ache in the heart of man for something supernatural. And I think that it's going to be during this time that God is going to reveal himself in a powerful way. And I think that's what we saw after the devastation. I think that will cause a level of brokenness, and people will be more pliable. Their hearts will be softer, and there will be that brokenness often leads to revival. I'm somewhat of a student of past revivals, and I think it's very possible that we could be in an atmosphere right now, in an environment right now, that will be coming, but there will have to be a brokenness and abandonment, almost an abandonment hope, I think, before people reach that place.
Yes, and I'm sure there'll be some people will probably have the question, do you think that some of any of these storms are actually weather related, or is that just completely symbolic?
I don't know. I don't know that, and I've been asked that before, and that's a great question, and one that I want to speculate on. I know what I saw was hard to discern. If food for thought, that some of the things that I was describing, seeing in the dream, almost sounded like a nuclear winter. It could be that, but I don't know.
Yeah, true.
I did have a word recently that I wanted to share this evening. Is important, and keep in mind, as you and I have become friends over the last while, you know I don't say things that I don't feel you won't hear me say at the Lord. But when I feel like the Lord has spoken, this is what I will say. I feel that this is what I heard the Lord say. And I had one of those experiences shortly after this dream, probably within about a week of this dream. I live about 70 miles outside of Washington, D.C. I live in rural Virginia. As we say in Virginia, as the crow flies, about 70 couple miles outside of Washington, D.C. One day, several weeks ago, I walked out my back door and I heard this, and I believe it to be from the Lord as I looked toward the east, because where I live will fly over my house as they're descending to fly into Dulles International Airport almost around the clock. As I walked on my back porch and looked toward D.C., I believe that I heard the Lord speak this to my heart. Washington will burn, and you will see the smoke rise from where you live. One day you will walk out your back door, and you will see the blast and the fire from where you now stand. Great fear will fall upon the nation on that day, and the great chaos that will ensue. Don't fear that day, but prepare your heart now for when that day comes.
Wow, that's powerful. So, how should people prepare their hearts for that day?
I don't think, Tony, there has ever been a more important time. You know, the word tells us God speaks to us and he says, draw nigh to me and I will draw nigh to you. And now is no time to be double minded. You know, the word says a double minded man is unstable in all of his ways. It has never been more important now to share for the reason of hope that is within us. That's what the word tells us. And, as a tool for evangelism, is the word says that we overcome the devil by the blood of the lamb and the word of our testimony. If you don't know how to share the Lord, share your testimony, and have an understanding, a basic understanding in end times. You don't need to be a scholar, just have a basic understanding, because one thing that I have seen in the last 24 months, I personally believe that all good things start at the foot of the cross. And some people, though, are not going to be reached by some of the methods that we've used in the past. But one thing I have noticed, everyone wants to know what's coming. They want to know, what does the future hold? They want to know. Bible prophecy is a real for so many people right now. So if we can have a basic understanding and have some answers for the things that are going on right now, I think that's very important. Share our faith, but for us as Christians to prepare doing what God has called us to do, whatever He's placed in our heart to do it now. If He's called you to ministry, make sure that you're ministering. If He's called you to fast, loved one or those you're at your your coworkers, reach out to them. But be who you're supposed to be. Don't let your guard down now. Don't loosen the wheels, so to speak, because we're so close to things changing. Everything can change right now in a moment of time.